Let's talk about the benefits for Apple first. Why the reaffirmation of 350? Why is this good for them and Apple Intelligence?
Look, they've had an invisible AI strategy. I mean, if you go back to like the last WWDCs, you felt like Michael J. Fox Back to the Future, right? There was really nothing there talking about AI. Finally, this is a huge step forward. And it's not going to happen internally. Had to happen from Google, Gemini. Look, and it comes down to like, if they never win DOJ suit, this doesn't happen. So, so it speaks to just brick by brick, they're finally building it. And I think this is going to be instrumental to the valuation for Apple this year.
If you look at the statement that was put out, it was very much, for the time being, this is going to be embedded in Apple foundation models. But the idea is that they pull away. They are able to get a grip on their own foundational models and indeed Siri becoming actually useful. Do you think they will distance themselves from Google over time?
Look, I think there's a better chance of me playing NFL playoffs than Apple doing something internally at this point. Look, the reality is, this is also a game of high-stakes poker, negotiation that's going on too, in terms of a broader deal with Google that I think they're ultimately going to have to do. Look, I think this will be exclusive. And because my view is that there's going to be some sort of subscription service, freemium. You also need a platform for developers. And it comes down to like the AI revolution. Like Apple's watching it from the sidelines, from the stands. They need to get into the game. And that's why we talk about $7,500 per share, that this adds to the story as they execute on the consumer AI revolution, finally going through Cupertino.
Dan, you had advocated on more than one occasion that Apple buy Perplexity. Mm-hmm. With this confirmation of Gemini being the underpinning of Siri, is such a transaction still necessary to your mind?
Yeah, and Ed, it's a great point, but a lot of that was based on as the DOJ suit was going on with Google. There was a sort of period there where Apple needed to do something. Now, obviously, Perplexity came and went. They're clearly not going to do that. But once Google won the DOJ suit, that was sort of like green light, lights on, and now it's sort of go time for big tech. And I think that speaks to why Apple did this deal. And look, you look at Google Gemini, what they've done. You go back a year ago, it's phenomenal, and I think Apple is making that bet. It's going to be a much different 2026 than 2025 relative to Apple when it comes to AI.
Again, Kara just made the point that Apple was very careful in the statement to explain which parts of Siri's functionality would be underpinned by Gemini. The other way of looking at that is to say, have they still got a lot of work to do to make Siri a sort of all-encompassing AI assistant?
I mean, look, it's an Everest-like uphill battle. Because the reality is they've lost so many developers. They've lost so much talent. You've seen a lot changing. And look, Ed, you know it as well as anyone. Like the DNA of Cupertino, a lot of that is supposed to come internally. And I think Cook recognized, look, writing on the wall, it speaks to my point that like Cook is not going to leave as CEO and leave this sort of in transition. He has to get the AI strategy sorted out. It's going to be a work in progress, but 2.4 billion iOS devices, 1.5 billion iPhones. It's my view that the consumer AI revolution ultimately comes through Cupertino, and this is a first step in that direction. We'll obviously see more about it in the spring, and of course more at WWDC.
Some might say it's incredibly savvy to be AI light, to not have to make all the investments in the data centers, to be able to say, look, privacy first, we're going to lean much more on edge AI. Is that actually going to be a winning formula for Apple in the future and as models and sophistication develops?
Yeah, look, but also Apple's in a much different situation because of the unrivaled install base, because of where they play in the consumer. That's why, like from a CapEx perspective, they're not Microsoft, Google, many other big tech players. But I think they finally hit the point, rubber met the road. They need to do something. They're going to have to incrementally spend, but they're basically going to rely on Google as a partner because you cannot have the fourth industrial revolution, biggest tech transition in the last 40 years, come and go and they don't monetize. And I think that's something that they recognize front and center, and it's key to the stock. I mean, realistically, like a year from now, stock's 350 or lower from here. It's all based on AI and them monetizing it.